What is up, party people? Welcome back to my channel. I'm Jamila. This is JemilaBeReadin, because I do be reading. And you may recall, I believe it was in 2020 or 2021, I posted this video where I read some of the winners of the Goodreads Choice Awards for whichever year. It'll say on here. Hopefully, we'll figure that out. Anyways, I haven't done a Goodreads Choice Awards themed video since then, and I kind of had the itch to do so again for 2023. So I thought, let's go ahead and do this again and read some of the winners of the Goodreads Choice Awards of 2023. But then I saw the results. I saw the results and I realized that we had a problem. Immediately, there was a problem.
Hey. What is this, honey?
So 3 of the books I had already read. These 3 books, I'll put my ratings below. Then another book that won for the sci-fi category was a TJ Klune book, and I did not want to support that man. And then 2 or 3 other books from some of the other categories were books that were published under St. Martin's Press. And I'm going to take a moment to let you guys know about the current boycott that's going on against St. Martin's Press and the imprints underneath it. And I realized I'd been pretty actively talking about this over on Instagram and TikTok, but I'd never actually spoke about the boycott here on YouTube. So I just wanted to take a moment. I know there's a lot of misinformation going around about this boycott that I wanted to also clear up. So what happened? Shortly after October 7th, a St. Martin's Press employee who works in the marketing department, works with book influencers, who is also a book influencer in their own right with quite a significant following, had made posts on their personal page, their personal Bookstagram page, that were very Islamophobic and anti-Palestinian. I'm talking using terms like Pallywood. I'm talking sharing videos from PragerU. It was really grim. It was really disgusting, okay? And so people noticed that, in particular, a Palestinian book talker by the name of Lean. I'm gonna link her TikTok page down below because she's great and you should be following her. She reached out to St. Martin's Press, and other people did as well, to let them know about this employee's posts. And as this is going on, Lean and other book talkers, book influencers, all who are Arab, Palestinian, Muslim, brown, black, pretty much BIPOC influencers, came together and realized that a lot of us, myself included, were not receiving ARCs that we were requesting from St. Martin's Press. Now, there are no guarantees with ARCs. Everybody understands that. Just because you request an ARC doesn't mean you're gonna get it. But in particular, what was going on is St. Martin's Press has an influencer program where you can sign up every month or so. They'll give a list, and you can sign up on a Google Docs or a Google Forms sheet to request your ARCs. And a bunch of people realized that BIPOC influencers were not receiving these ARCs in particular. And some people have even emailed directly to St. Martin's Press to request these ARCs, and were told that it was either not available or that it was outside of the requesting period, even though people had requested during. Apologies, my camera died, so I'm now filming this on my phone. But BIPOC influencers were realizing that they were not receiving ARCs that their white counterparts had been receiving. So that was also something that people started asking St. Martin's Press at the same time as, the stuff that's going down with their employee. So the response that Lean in particular got from the VP of St. Martin's Press was rather condescending, was very rude, and a lot of people started spreading misinformation that the issue was just a random influencer didn't want an ARC, when that is not the issue. Thus, the boycott was born. It is a marketing boycott, not a consumer boycott. It is not asking that people not purchase these books. It's modeled after the HarperCollins union strike, which was created to limit harm to authors. So you can still purchase books, but the ask is that influencers, or really anybody, because as we know with TikTok, a random book review can go viral regardless of how many followers you have. We're asking people not to discuss, review, talk about these books under this imprint and its other imprints. And this is simply because, you know, as influencers, particularly BIPOC influencers, why we're helping to push the sales of these books and we're not getting paid for it. So why are we going to help a company that does not care about equity and safety of the influencers that it's working with? The main demands are, one, not to have this employee fired. That has never been a demand of this boycott. The demand is asking that St. Martin's Press denounce this rhetoric and to give actionable steps on how they're going to promote equity and safety for the BIPOC influencers that they're working with. And if you have any questions or want some more information, I guarantee you everything that you want to know you can find at Readers for Accountability. I'll link their Instagram page. They also have a TikTok, but I think it's easier to navigate on Instagram. They have a bunch of information that you could ever want. Any questions that you may have, I guarantee will be answered if you go check out Readers for Accountability. Sorry for this random long tangent about the boycott, but I really just wanted to talk about it and make sure that people like knew about it, because I know there's a lot of people who don't know about it. And as always, free Palestine. All right, so I had a conundrum, right? I'm looking at these winners. I didn't want to read a lot of these books. Some were under the boycott, all of these things. So I kind of packed it up for a moment. I was like, I don't think I'm gonna do this. But I was talking about this issue that I was having with this video idea with some people on Discord, and Caitlin, who has a booktube account, I'll link it down below. She suggested that I read the lowest voted books for each or some of the categories. And I thought that was a brilliant idea, because as I was looking at it, some of the books that got the least amount of votes were actually the most interesting to me, and books that I actually already had on my TBR. So I thought, this new idea is born. Thank you, Caitlin, shout out. And that is what I'm going to be doing in this video. I'm going to be reading the lowest voted books for the categories of fiction, romantasy, romance, sci-fi, fantasy, and mystery thriller. Am I forgetting something? I was going to read historical fiction and memoir, but the historical fiction is Northwoods, which, you know, I'm sure is a really good book. I know it's been getting a lot of accolades and awards and other, like, I guess, more prestige awards. No shade, no tea to Goodreads, but actually all the shade, all the tea towards Goodreads. And I just have no interest in reading this book. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I'm sure it's good. I just have no interest. And for memoir, I actually decided that I wanted to use that book for a different video idea. So I have these 6 books, or these 6 categories, I'm pretty sure. What books did I read? Oh, and horror. I forgot about horror. 7 categories. Spoiler alert, I did actually only read to completion 5 books in this video, but you'll just have to figure out what those is. What those is? Do I even know how to speak? What those are. I'm gonna stop now before I quickly deteriorate and cannot speak any longer. And we'll just hop into the vlog portion and you'll find out what books I'm reading. Hello, you are in my kitchen right now. I'm in the middle of cooking and I have a lot to update you on. So this is the first time I'm actually like recording, talking about any of the books for this video. I haven't even filmed an intro at this point. So I'm kind of really going off the cuff right now. So I have been reading. And I've actually, I finished 3 books and DNF'd 1. So I have a lot to catch y'all up on, okay? So since I'm in the middle of cooking, I am not going to grab the physical copies of these books. So I'm just going to put them up on the screen as I'm editing. I started off with the least votes for Romantasy, which was A Dawn of Onyx. And I actually already owned a physical copy of that book because I'm a part of the Berkeley's like romance influencer program, and that was one of the books that I had apparently selected at some point last year. I don't recall, but apparently I did. So I was happy to tackle a book that was already on my physical TBR. I actually remember what the main character's name is because it's funny. It's Arwen, which is funny because that's isn't it that elf girl from Lord of the Rings? Girl, I only watched the first 2 movies and that was like a decade ago. I don't even remember. So I'm like waving around this knife. I'm so sorry. I don't even remember much from those movies. Don't hate me. But I was like, wow, Arwen, okay. And I remember the guy's name too. His name Cain Ravenwood. I was like, come on, let's do something more interesting than that. So anyway, we have Arwen, who is living with her mother and sister, and her mom is very ill. It seems like she may have some sort of like illness or something. So Arwen is kind of like the primary breadwinner for her family. Father is not around, and on top of that, her stepfather passed away, and she was not close with him. In fact, he was particularly abusive towards her. So that's kind of what's going on with her. And she also has like these healing magics. So like everyone knows about like witches and stuff. This is like in fantasy land or whatever. And everybody knows about magic and witches and blah, blah, blah. So it's like not particularly unique, but like her form of magic is really unique. So she kind of hides it a little bit, but also uses it to heal people and stuff like that. So we have that. Her brother is off fighting in this war that's happening with the Onyx Court, or the Onyx Kingdom. By the way, it's all like gem-based. I thought it was gem-based magic, and I was like kind of excited for that, but that's not what was going on. Of course, it ended up being about Fae. I'm so sick of Fae. I'm tired of it. Why does every single romantasy have to be about Fae? There are other types of magic things, or make up your own. Enough with the fairies, okay? Anyway. The different lands are named after like different gems. So you have like the Onyx Kingdom, which is like really wealthy, and they are attacking Homegirl's land. I think it's like Amber or something like that. So her brother's off fighting in a war, and he comes back one day and he's like, LOL, we were attacked and I was the only survivor and no one noticed me, so I just stole the soldiers' money. And now they're after me. And I led them back here. And I was like, bro, come on. Let's be a little smart. So shit happens. She ends up sacrificing herself to protect him and gets captured by these soldiers from the Onyx Kingdom and gets taken to the court over there. And she is like, I have all these magic-y healy powers. And they're like, okay, you're going to work for the Onyx Kingdom now. So she goes and she's kind of like a prisoner for a hot sec, and then she's not, and then she meets the king, who's Fae. They're shape-shifting Fae. He turns into a dragon, and his lieutenant named Griffin. Do you want to, let's just take a moment. Guess what he turns into? Yes, he turns into a griffin. His name is Griffin, and he turns into a griffin. Anyways, this book was very silly goofy, and I was enjoying my time at the beginning. I was kind of like, you know, like, this isn't great, but I could maybe get behind this, like, if it's a fun time. But, you know, I will say, of the romantasy books that I've read, which have not been many, this is definitely the better written of the few that I've read. It's definitely, you can tell that it was edited. I believe this was initially self-published before it got picked up by Berkeley, but like I could tell that like editing and thought went into the production of this book. But in a certain way, it almost feels a bit, girl, they're blowing up my line. I could tell that it was a little sterilized. I feel like it was a bit of devoid of personality. Like it hit all the beats that you would come to expect from the romantasy subgenre, but I just didn't feel anything. Like, I didn't care about any of these characters. It's like I could almost see it happening for me. Like, I could almost see it working for me, but it just didn't quite hit, unfortunately. I didn't hate my time reading it, which is already a plus compared to some of the other books that I've read, like Fourth Wing or From Blood and Ash, stuff like that. That's just not good or well edited. And I am like kind of curious about the second book. I actually got the ARC from the Berkeley Influencer Program. I was like, I don't think I'm gonna read the second book, but then I saw the ARC and I was like, well, maybe I'll check it out. I don't know. I am kind of curious to see where this is gonna go. But overall, I landed on giving this one a 2.5 star. So Barnes & Noble was having their post-Christmas sale. Usually they do 50% off all hardcovers, but they switched it up this year. They just did 30%, I think, but they had 50% off select hardcovers online, and I saw that Family Meal was on there, and I was having a hard time finding it at my library. There's a lot of holds, and I had put the audiobook on hold, and I guess a bunch of people must have like clicked deliver later or canceled their hold, because the audiobook actually came in before I received the physical copy of the book. So I just started listening to it, and then I switched to the physical version once I got that. So Family Meal is by Brian Washington. This is for the lit fic category, or like general fiction category for Goodreads. This is my first Brian Washington. He's been on my radar. I've heard mixed to positive reviews of Memorial, and I think I actually own the ebook maybe, I'm not sure. But I've been wanting to read that and check out his work. I actually didn't even know that he had a new book that came out last year, so I was like kind of surprised to see it on the list, but I checked it out. It is certainly an interesting book. So we're following 3 different POVs. We start off with Cam, who is back in Houston from LA. His boyfriend passed away in a very, well, let's say he was murdered in a very tragic circumstance. He goes to Houston, which is where he's from, and he ends up working for a bar or whatever, and he ends up reconnecting with a childhood friend. So he was actually orphaned when he was younger. His parents got into a car accident, and he ended up getting raised by his childhood friend's family, and they owned a bakery, and he used to like work at this bakery and all that stuff, but like I think some stuff happened between him and his friend Kai, and he kind of just like went off to LA, and like they haven't spoken in like nearly a decade at this point. So they're kind of reconnecting. There's still like kind of bad blood, particularly on Kai's side. And we're just kind of following Cam like spiral out of control. He's dealing with like substance abuse and sex addiction, and just a lot of mental health issues. I would definitely recommend checking out the content warnings for this book. I have booktriggerwarnings.com and Storygraph link down below, but it's very heavy. It deals with some very heavy topics. We switched points of view to his boyfriend that passes away. I'm blanking on his name for some reason, but it kind of just jumps between, we have Cam for like the first, like I'd say third of this book, and then it bounces between his boyfriend in like past tense and Kai. And we're just kind of watching as mainly Cam and Kai reconnect and kind of find themselves. It's very much one of those like no plot kind of vibes, very focused on the characters and the character development books. And I think I enjoyed it. I will say there were parts of this that were like a little bit jarring to read, but for the most part, I think I enjoyed this book. The one thing I will say, I'm usually someone that doesn't mind multiple POVs, that jump around a lot, or even jump between timelines a lot. That usually doesn't bother me. I don't know that the multiple POVs were like utilized in the right manner for this book. It kind of felt a little bit disorganized, and I wasn't really sure exactly like if all of them needed to be there, you know what I mean? So I will say that was a downside for me on that book, but for the most part, I think I enjoyed it, and I am curious to read his other works. I think what he did really well in this book was like really evoke like a sense of place. And also like there's so much like cooking and like a love and passion for cooking in this book, and just like how cooking features with all of these different like familial, friendship, and romantic connections. So I really enjoyed that aspect of the book as well. Yeah, I don't think this book will work for everyone. I can see why it kind of has mixed reviews online, but I think I enjoyed it. I think I land somewhere at like a 3.5 stars for that book. So the next book that I attempted to read was The Long Game by Elena Armas, which is the least voted of the romance category, which I find so interesting because I'm pretty sure The Spanish Love Deception won like in 2020 or 2021. So how far she's fallen. I mean, not a big deal at all, but I actually attempted to read The Spanish Love Deception when it first came out. Around that time, I kept hearing people talking about it and they're like, this is so good, this is so good. And so I pick it up and I start reading it and I'm like, bruh, are we reading the same thing? I DNF'd it like pretty quickly, and I would say probably like 5% into the book. I just couldn't hand the writing style. I found the main female character to be extremely irritating, and I was like, girl, stand up. I need you to stand up right now. And then the guy, he sucked ass. So I was like, I can't root for anybody here. Like, I'm just gonna see myself out. Okay, so that's what I did. And I've had no interest to pick up an Elena Armas since. And I would not have picked up The Long Game had it not been for this video. But I was hoping, you know, I went in with some hope that maybe she's grown as a writer. You know, maybe the Spanish Love Deception was just not for me. But alas, you know, we had to DNF again. I did make it further. I got 25% of the way into this book before I DNF'd. This one's following, you know, a girl. I don't remember her name. She is working for her father, who owns, I think, a soccer team. And she has a bad experience with her father. He's like, kind of like, doesn't really believe in her and is like really strict on her, and she's kind of constantly working hard to prove herself to him. And on top of that, there's this man who's kind of like his protege that he like promoted over her and all that stuff, even though she's like worked a lot harder, and he kind of like took credit for some of the things that she had implemented in regards to like marketing for this team or whatever. So at the start of this book, like we find out that she went like apeshit on the mascot and like just started like beating him up in front of everyone. And so of course someone recorded it and it went viral. And so now there's like a PR crisis happening, and he's just like, I can't believe you, blah, blah, blah. So he ends up like kind of exiling her to a small town somewhere, I don't remember where it is, to help with like some sort of like charity thing for the team, and is like basically like, you need to lay low until we fix this and all that stuff. But she ends up kind of getting, like I said, like banished from this team temporarily. And so she goes and finds out that this like charity thing is like a little kids team, a little girls soccer team in this small town. And it turns out that they have a coach, and it's this guy whose name I also don't remember, who is a famous soccer player. And he's kind of like hiding out, like no one really knows who he is. He goes by a nickname, except for the mayor, who I will say the mayor is like the best part of that story, and I wish she had her own story, but I don't know that Elena Armas would do it justice. So anyway, so he's kind of laying low. They get off to a very bad start, like very bad start. And where I ended up DNFing is that they were about to kind of come together to work on this team. And I simply couldn't take it anymore. He sucks. She was okay. She wasn't as annoying as the main character in The Spanish Love Deception. But he sucked. I couldn't stand him. I was actively rooting against him, in fact. Yeah, just, it's so interesting. I've noticed a pattern just based off of these 2 books that I didn't even finish. That Elena Armas loves having a main female character who's like having to go up against the patriarchy. Like, she's surrounded by, like, quite frankly, like mustache twirling, deeply misogynistic men that she kind of has to go up against. And then the love interest, who I assume is supposed to help her, but is also misogynistic, just in a different way. Like, misogynistic, but like, I like you. So I'm just like, what is going on here? I don't understand. I don't like this. It's just not a good time for me. But I will say, like I said, the mayor in that book, she was fun. She kind of just kept popping up and just like cackling and like giving everyone baked goods. And I was like, you know what, girl? Valid. I love that. So there's that. I did DNF it. I will not be returning. I have no shame. And finally, a book that I finished last night was Venko, which was the least voted for the fantasy section. I thought Venko was an interesting pick. I'm actually like a little bit surprised that it got nominated for fantasy. It's very light on the fantasy, I will say. It is about witches. There is some magic involved, but I'd say like it almost feels more metaphorical than anything. Interesting. I've noticed a lot for especially like the genre fiction categories that there was a lot of more like hybrid books, like things that felt a little bit more literary than you would expect from some of these genres. I've watched a lot of people's like Goodreads related videos in December, and there was a few people who read like the mystery thriller category, and I think one refrain that I kept hearing over and over again was how there was so many books in the category that felt kind of more like literary thriller rather than like, you know, just straight up genre fiction, genre conventions thriller. And I feel like I kind of noticed the same with some of the fantasy and sci-fi categories as well. So I just found that to be a little bit interesting. I love a good literary subgenre moment, but yeah, it is interesting. So I'd say Venko kind of falls into more of like a contemporary fiction with some magical elements, not magical realism. Like there is definitively magic happening in this book, but it's very light magic. We're following Lucky. We're actually following multiple POVs, but Lucky, I would say, is our main protagonist. She lives in Toronto with her grandmother, who is kind of like experiencing a little bit of like dementia, I would say. She had a very interesting relationship with her mother, who passed when she was younger, so she grew up primarily with her grandmother. And it turns out that she's a witch. There are a group of women who are trying to form a coven to like save the world. Saving the world is really saving the world from misogyny. Like a lot of this was like very like allegorical for like the patriarchy and like women fighting back, which love that. But I will say I don't know that this book really had like that much to say or that anything new to say. But we'll get to that. So this coven, they need 7 people. They have the 6th. They locate her. She finds like these magic spoons, which is how they like indicate that they're a witch. And so they get to her and they're like, hello, we need you to join our coven, blah, blah, blah. And she's like, all right. I feel like I'm explaining this so poorly. And then so she basically gets sent on a series of tasks kind of to find the final person of their coven. Meanwhile, there's this man, a part of another secret organization, which is like men who like kill and hunt witches. They're like witch hunters, but it's like symbolism for the patriarchy. And he's like hunting her down. You know, he's trying to stop this coven from forming. And then, yeah, it's pretty much it. I thought it was fine. I've read from Sherry Dimmeline before. I read Empire of the Wild, which I enjoyed, I'd say more than this for sure. This one was like good. I didn't hate my time with this, but I also didn't love it. It wasn't anything to write home about, I'd say. If you're interested in reading it, yeah, like check it out. I wouldn't discourage, feel like I don't have much to say. I gave this one like a 3.5 stars. Like, I don't have very strong feelings about it. It wasn't bad. It wasn't amazing. So that's kind of where we are. I just started the 5th book, which is Dead 11 by Jimmy Giuliano. I love that. It's very Italian. Watch him not even be Italian or something. It's for the horror category. 2024, I'm trying to be the horror girly, so I feel like this is a good start. I've heard some good things about this book, I think. It kind of has mixed reviews online, though, like on Goodreads. I've only read like a chapter, so I will say that chapter, well, there was like a little intro, which I was like, whatever, but the actual first chapter, that was wild. I will say that was a trip. That was a wild time. I was like, oh, I'm intrigued. What's going to happen here? I'm intrigued. So I'll come back to you guys. Hopefully I'll like actually update you guys while I'm reading this book instead of just coming to you like 5 books later and just basically doing a wrap up. Yeah, that's really all I have to say right now. Okay, the quality is really bad right now. Sorry, I'm filming on my phone because I could not be bothered to set up my camera, which you can see it right behind me. But it's like 11 o'clock at night and I can't do that. Okay, so I'm reading Dead 11 and I'm so stressed. I'm also freaking out a little bit. Like every sound I hear, I'm like, bro, am I gonna die? I shouldn't read this book at night, but really it's winter time. The sun sets at like 4 p.m. So the majority of my day is at night. And that is usually when I'm in the mood for reading. So I just have to suck it up. I have a little like cozy fireplace jazz situation going on the TV to kind of give like cozy vibes right now. But I'm feeling like nothing of the sorts. This book is stressing me out, okay? I'm feeling the horror. I am. It's not even like horror, like jump scares or anything particularly gruesome, but like the author is doing a really good job of setting up all of this tension, and I'm just like, and I can't stop reading. Like I need to know what's going to happen, but I'm also scared. I don't want to know what's going to happen. Help. Okay, basically what this book is about, it's like a really interesting format. So you have Harper, who is a sports reporter. He arrives on this island called Clifford Island, which is like in Wisconsin. And he's searching for his sister Willow, who has been missing. She's gone missing. Willow came to this island. Her son tragically passed away, and like her relationship with her husband deteriorated. She's having a really hard time. She's also like having flashbacks to when she had these like horrible nightmares as a child and just all this stuff. But anyway, she basically gets like kind of like a sign from her dead son to go to Clifford Island, and so she goes. And then we're following like, it's basically like, it's like a book that's written by Harper. He has like an author's note at the beginning. So he's, I guess, technically like putting together this whole story. So we get his POV, like as things are happening. And then we're also getting letters that Willow is writing to her husband. We're getting letters from her. We're also getting like some of her POV. We're getting POVs of like other random islanders. And we're getting POVs from this one teenager, her like text messages between her and her boyfriend. Basically, there's like some shady ass shit happening on this island. Some sketchy, like supernatural ass shit happening. And like everyone is basically stuck in, like not stuck. They're intentionally living like it's the 90s. Like one thing that they keep talking about is how like everyone is watching the O.J. Simpson Ford Bronco chase. And just on repeat every single day. And like people are like redoing their routines every single day. Like certain shows that they're watching. They don't have like any technology on this island. Like people are like, I think like sneaking cell phones and stuff, but there's pretty much nothing here. It's wild. And they're doing it on purpose.
I think it's like some sort of ritual to keep the weird supernatural shit at bay. And yeah, so it's wild. And also I was just thinking, like, I don't know if y'all like remember that episode of Supernatural where Sam and Dean go to this small town. God, I think they like were passing through. I don't know that they intentionally went, but there's this small town that basically was like sacrificing travelers like every year, like the same time every year they like sacrifice someone, and it basically like protects their town and like makes it very like bountiful and like all of that stuff. The crops are always good. And I feel like this book is giving me the vibes of that particular episode, which I always like think about that episode. I don't know why that's like one of the episodes of Supernatural that has really stuck with me. But I've always kind of like wanted a book that kind of gave that vibe. And this is it. Like, I think if you're a Supernatural fan, I think you would like this book. This is definitely not as intense as Supernatural, especially in the supernatural elements. Like, it's very much like kind of more mystery vibes. Like, you don't really know what's going on. Like, clearly like something supernatural-ish is going on, you know? But it is, yeah, I'm stressed. I'm 61% of the way through this book, and I don't know. I feel like I can try to finish it tonight. I don't know that I should. Will I sleep well? Who knows? But I'm going to try to get as far as I can. And I'll come back to y'all when I finish it, or if some crazy ass shit happens. Hello. I'm very tired. It's midnight. I'm still chugging along, but you know, this reminded me of another show, specifically the Dual Spires episode, season 4 of Psych. I know it exactly. Where Sean and Gus get this email about a cinnamon festival and also some interesting stuff, and they go to this town where everyone is also living really weirdly and don't know a lot of things, and they have to solve a crime. That's also, it's like that mixed with that episode of Supernatural. That's the vibes of this book.
Hello. I have finished Dead 11 this morning. I am having a hard time deciding my rating on this. I don't know. I feel like I've given the last 2 books 3.5 stars, and I'm like, is this another 3.5 stars? I enjoyed this one. I think it did a good job scaring me, but that also could be because I'm a scaredy cat. I also don't read a lot of horror, so I am sure other, you know, well-read horror readers are like, this is nothing. But, you know, for me, it made me uneasy. It did. Yeah, I don't know. I think I'd probably give it like 3 or 3.5 stars. I was really enjoying it, but I found the end to just be kind of anticlimactic. I also like, when I'm like sitting here like trying to think about this book, I'm like wondering like what it was trying to say. Obviously there was a lot of like a big theme around grief, but I just don't really know like what it's trying to say, especially considering the premise. I don't know how to talk about this without getting into spoilers, but these people are reenacting the specific day of a mass tragedy that happened on the island in order to keep evil at bay. And I feel like the conclusion of the book is that you have to stay in your grief, that you have to relive your grief and not move on. That almost feels like what it's saying. Like I feel like maybe the author like wasn't thinking too deeply about it when writing this book. I mean, I don't know. I haven't seen any author interviews or anything like that, so I'm not really sure like what his intentions was with this, but it almost feels like it's saying like don't move on from grief. I read this review from this person on Goodreads. I'll like pop up the review here. But I think an interesting thing that they pointed out was, and thematically, I'm baffled by what it's trying to say. So when you have these people endlessly recreating an era gone by 30 years ago, and characters like a pastor observing how things were much simpler back then, well, you might imagine it's commentary on conservatism and traditionalism. I would be very into that. But when the evil that these people fear is real, that's when it stops being commentary on conservatism and it ends up being an ad for conservatism. If you don't stop these crazy kids from making a ruckus, then the unspeakable evil thing will take over America. Doesn't that sound scary? Sure, we aren't necessarily happy on this conservative island, but if we stop being so conservative, the evil gets unleashed. That's really interesting. I feel like that's a really interesting point. I was kind of like wondering like where this book was gonna go. I feel like it didn't do anything, and it almost feels like it accidentally, you know, like this reviewer was saying, ended up kind of promoting like traditionalism and conservatism and wallowing in your grief. And again, like I don't know, like maybe the author just like wasn't really thinking too deeply about that when he was writing this book, and it was just kind of like this creepy little thing that he was writing. But it does feel a little bit weird, especially like in this time that we're in right now. So that's why I'm kind of like pausing on this book. I'm like not really sure what it was trying to do or what it was trying to say. I feel like I'm not well read in horror, but the horror that I have read has often had commentary attached to it. I tend to read more like social horror or horror that's being used specifically to tackle some larger theme or social commentary, and it usually does so very well. So I think when you have a book like this where it's so clear that grief is the big thing and then doesn't like do much with that, I find it to be curious. So I think it was well executed in the point where I think all of the little like interviews and text messages and letters and different POVs, like I think it came together well craft wise. Like I said, I do feel like the ending was a little bit anticlimactic, so it was kind of like didn't quite hit for me, but it wasn't badly written. I feel like I would potentially read more from this author. I know this was a debut, and I know that this is going to be turned into a movie, or it's been like picked up for production, and I feel like it would work really well on screen as a TV show or a movie. So I feel like I would watch it if it came out. But it is interesting. I am curious. I might try to see if there's any author interviews that talk more about this, where he talks more about this book and like kind of what was going on in his mind, because I'm kind of curious now. Yeah, I think I probably would land around like a 3.5 stars again for this one. We haven't had like a winner yet. I've had books that I've liked, but there was some issues with it. I've had a book that was not that great. I had a DNF. We only have a couple books left, so hopefully we'll find a winner here. I think the next book that I'm going to pick up is The Great Transition by Nick Fuller Guggens, which was in the science fiction category. And this was actually sent to me by the publisher. And this seems like it's another one of those literary dystopians, which I usually enjoy. So I'm hoping that this one could be a winner. I think the cover is really stunning. I feel like I'm kind of matching. You can't really see my shirt very well, but we're kind of matching lip wise. So we'll see. I don't actually really know what this one's about. It's another debut. It says a triumphant debut. The Great Transition offers a breathtaking glimpse of our near future, told through the story of one family trying to protect each other and the place we call home. And anyways, I'll come back to you when I have something to say about this. My tripod is standing precariously on my kitchen countertop, so hopefully nothing bad happens. Yeah. Anyways, you know, I feel like I keep filming clips in the kitchen. What can I say? I'm a chef. I'm just kidding. I'm not. I'm actually just putting away my dishes from the dishwasher, and I thought I would update you guys as I'm doing so. So here's where I'm at. I'm feeling kind of stuck a little bit. So I started The Great Transition, and I've only read like 40 pages all week. Like, it is it's really slow going. I'm just like not interested at all. And I want to push. I want to at least make it to like 100 pages before I decide to DNF. I'm hoping it gets, once the actual like plot part of the book that's described like on as in the blurb. I'm hoping that will get me more engaged, but it's very slow so far. And that's not usually a negative thing for me because I don't mind a slow story, but the thing is, I don't care about any of these characters so far. Again, I'm only 40 pages, but I'm actually like not liking these characters. So it's kind of multi-POV. We're following Emmy, who is 15 years old. And I think her POV is really tripping me up a lot. I just find her to be kind of annoying, but annoying in a way that teenagers are. So it's like not really, it's like more me than her. I don't know. I don't really know. It's just like the way that the author chose to write her narration is interesting, but then also I feel like there isn't a lot of differentiation between her and some of the other POVs, like her father, for example. I also didn't realize this. I think this is just something that doesn't bother me. I know this like really bothers people with Sally Rooney's writing, how she doesn't have quotations around dialogue. I, to be honest, didn't even notice that when I was reading. It really doesn't bother me at all. It took me like probably 30 pages before I realized that there weren't quotations around dialogue because I was kind of like zoning out and trying to focus, and I was like getting a little bit confused with like what was happening, and I realized, oh, okay, this is dialogue, and I was like, oh, I just realized that there wasn't quotation marks. So all of that to say, lack of quotation marks apparently don't bother me, okay? Which is great, but there is, if that is something that's going to bother you, then maybe don't pick up this book. But I don't know, it's just, I just don't feel captured by any of these characters. It's futuristic, like post-apocalyptic. It's climate fiction. I think there was some disasters were happening, and then Emmy's parents were instrumental in creating the Great Transition, which is, I'm not quite sure what that is, but it's stopped or slowed down the climate disaster. I don't know. So now we're like post Great Transition, but I think they like commemorate it every year. But her mom's like, we shouldn't be like celebrating this because so many people died in like the climate crisis. And her mom's like a scientist ? And and then the back of the book says her mom becomes a suspect in a murder. Apparently a bunch of people who were criminals, they were a part of the, I think probably like corporations or something that caused the whatever climate crisis. I'm having a hard time describing this book. We're about to go on trial or something, and then they end up all getting murdered, and her mom is a suspect. So I feel like once we get to that part, it might be more interesting, but I'm just having a hard time getting into it. I don't particularly like the writing. Also, the author pulls a quote from Parables of the Sower at the beginning of the book, and I'm like, bro, you can't swing heavy like that and then flop. No offense. I mean, I can't say it's a flop yet, but I just like, you come out swinging with Octavia Butler, you gotta live up to Octavia Butler then, bro. You can't bring her in and not reach that height. So we'll see how it goes. I will let you know. Hi, I'm once again coming to you from the kitchen. I don't know why I keep filming. Jesus. I don't know why I keep filming clips here, but I'm here. I'm sorry that I'm looking ugly. That is simply my default nature, so.
I'm ugly and I'm proud.
Louder!
I'm ugly and I'm proud.
Louder!
I'm ugly and I'm proud.
Enjoy it in all its glory. In any case, I think I'm gonna have to call it quits on this book, guys. I do. I made it 58% of the way, and I just every moment is a battle. Every moment trying to read this book is a battle. I just will read a couple of pages, get a little bit annoyed, put it down, and then spend like an hour scrolling through my phone. I'm like, oh yeah, I should go back to reading. And then I just do that, rinse and repeat, it has taken me so long just to even make it this far. This book's not long. It's under 350 pages. I should have finished it by now, but I'm having such a hard time. I think I already explained what this book is about, so I'm not going to bore you with all of that again. I was looking up a lot of reviews because I wanted to see like what people were saying about this book. And a lot of people were saying that around the 70% mark is when it turns kind of like into a thriller. And I was like, okay, that's odd. Like this is a very slow book. So we have Emmy's POV present. We have Larch's POV present. We also have Larch's POV in the past. And then we have these little excerpts from a project that Emmy is working on for school about the Great Transition and like the climate crisis and all of that stuff, where she's interviewing her mom. So we get that perspective as well. And that's the closest we get to Christina's perspective, which I will say, like, one of the things that's really irking me is that we don't have Christina's perspective. I just feel like we're missing a lot in this book. I question why Emmy and Larch were chosen to be the main POVs. I think, one, I think they're boring, but two, they both have like very similar perspectives in a way, and I wish we got Christina, because from their point of view, Christina is coming off really unlikable because she's so like almost militant about her beliefs. Like, I'm on her side personally, like I'm on her side, but I think a lot of people who are like not already believing in the things that she believes in are going to find her really like militant and angry and unlikable. And I think that's just a choice. I think it's an interesting choice that the author didn't like add her perspective at all to even try to humanize her a little bit. I guess in some ways, like, maybe I'm kind of glad that the author didn't. It's like a double-edged sword. I want Christina's perspective. I also don't think this author could have written Christina's perspective because she's like a Mexican migrant climate justice warrior. Like, I just don't think he had, like, he's a white man from Maine. Not that anyone can't write outside of their perspectives, but it takes a lot. And I just don't know that he could have written that perspective well. So I guess in some respects, I'm kind of glad he didn't write from that perspective, but I feel like the book needed that perspective. So it's like this weird situation where I feel like we needed her perspective. I also think it would have been like rounded out the story a little bit more to have the perspective of the people like in power or something like that. Not because I think we need to have a both sides argument at all. I'm very much on the side of what I think this book is trying to say in terms of justice, but I just think it would have added more to the point that I think the author was trying to make, to also have that perspective. It just like, the story just felt like we were missing a lot of things, and I wanted more out of it. And I don't know, again, because I have not finished the book and I'm deciding to call it quits right now. I don't know if I'll return to it at some point, but I simply cannot continue right now for this video because it's just taking me so long, and I'd like to get this video out in the next few days. And I still have one more book to read. In looking at the reviews that I saw, some of the negative I was looking at the negative reviews to see if people were feeling similar to me, and it's like people didn't like this book for like the complete opposite reasons that I didn't like this book. A lot of people seem to be very uncomfortable with the idea of justice and the assassination of these climate criminals and the elite. A lot of people didn't like being confronted with the different forms of justice there are. And that is not the problem I had with this book. So I guess on a positive, I did like that messaging, I suppose. But assuming that that's where the author is trying to go. Again, I have not finished this book, but it's interesting. I'm not loving it. I think it's not very nuanced. Like, the messaging is so in your face. It's very upfront, and I don't necessarily take issue with that in books. There are a few books that I've really loved where I thought it was like a message forward book, where it wasn't super nuanced. and the message was in your face, but I think these books just did it much better. For example, Great Cities Duology by N.K. Jemisin. That one, I feel like it's very obvious with its messaging, but I think she did a really good job with these characters and writing like all of these really different, very vibrant characters that felt alive. So like you really felt like attached to these characters. And the same thing with Chang'e All-Stars. I think that one is also a very message forward book, but again, I think the author just wrote it in a way where it was very engaging and you really like got sucked into it and you really like cared about these characters and wanted to know. There's kind of like a little bit of an underlying mystery element carrying you through, and you had all of these different perspectives that just really came together really well. So I don't necessarily take issue with a message first type of book. I just think this was not written particularly well. And I know this is the author's debut, and I'm curious to see like what he puts out, but I am not enjoying this and I'm DNFing it. I'm moving on to the final book, which is the thriller that I still don't remember what the name is. Hopefully I can finish it today. Hopefully I don't also DNF that one. Okay, my friends, I have finished the final book for this video, and that was for the mystery thriller category, and it's called The Maid's Diary by Laura. I'm not even gonna bother. It's The Maid's Diary, and I was anticipating wanting like that I would not like this and would potentially DNF it because I've heard some negative reviews, and I actually finished it and I thought it was like pretty readable. I did see all of the plot twists coming. I called it, and I'm not usually someone that's like really good at calling plot twists, but I like figured out all of them. Like I was not particularly surprised by what was going on. But basically what this is it's following multiple perspectives. We have Kit, who is a maid. She works as a maid for wealthy clients. Like she works for a specific cleaning company and gets dispatched out to various wealthy houses to clean. And she has like a snooping problem. She is really all about snooping, getting into people's business, finding out about them, and things kind of come to a head for her when a new assignment is this couple that had really harmed her in her past. And this couple is John Rittenberg, who was an Olympic skier, and his wife Daisy, who's like comes from a really wealthy family. Yeah, I won't spoil it. I guess I might a little bit, just to give some content warnings. Like there is talk about like rape and sexual assault that happens. He rapes her when she was a teenager, and it ends up kind of becoming like a revenge story. Basically, someone is potentially dead, and we get the perspective of Kit through her diary entries that she's writing. We also get the perspectives of John and Daisy. We get the perspectives of some other like side characters. And then we also have the perspective of Mallory, who is a detective that's investigating this crime scene and trying to figure out who's been potentially killed or disappeared or missing. And it's all like leading up to a head. We're following all of these perspectives, keep going kind of like back and forth between Mallory as investigating it, and then different perspectives leading up to the crime. And I thought it was pretty interesting and engaging. Yeah, for all intents and purposes, I thought this was like a fine mystery thriller. Like it wasn't anything to write home about. It wasn't shocking or particularly twisty. Like obviously, if me as someone who doesn't really read a lot of mystery thrillers was able to figure out all of the twists before they happened, like I'm sure more seasoned mystery thriller readers are probably not gonna like have the best time with this book. And I was feeling like giving this one just like a 3-star, but I will say there was some like weird stuff in this that kind of like left me feeling a little off, particularly around like abortion and some of the motivations of the main character. It's just, it was weird. I didn't know like what the author was trying to do or say around that. It was just a bit off to me. I was just like, I don't really know what's going on here, so I think I'm gonna just give it like a 2.5 stars. Things were a little off, but other than that, it was like a perfectly fine book. It's like one of those like popcorn reads. You could probably like pick it up at the airport and like read it, and it entertains you through your flight, you know, that type of book, but then you never think about it again, which is how I felt about this. Like, I'm probably not gonna ever think about it again until I'm like wrapping up the year or something like that. So that leaves us at the end. That leaves us at the end of this video. In conclusion, did these books deserve to get the least votes? Maybe. I don't know. I just wanted to have a silly, goofy time. And I hope you enjoyed. And I'll see y'all in the next video.